Let me comment a little bit also on this very intriguing title that our meeting has, and begin with the last part of the title. We've talked already a little bit about what it means to view the conflict as hopeful or hopeless. And my own view, I think, is a little different than what others have said. I think if you use the rational intellect, it is hopeless. It's very hard. We are not intelligent enough to be either hopeless or hopeful, because that assumes that you understand the future. And what we learn, for instance, in the context of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa, or against Soviet oppression in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, was that all of the experts missed the essential human equation that converts what the rational mind sees as hopeless into an unexpected outcome that is more in accord with hope. And so what I'm trying really to say is that the possibility of a hopeful outcome and the uncertainty as to what will come historically ethically requires us to engage in the struggle for what is right. That we must act, in my view, as if hope were possible. Which is kind of everything that Jeff said, if you really look at that argument, would suggest that you have to be a utopian idealist, to imagine that there could be a just peace emerging out of these facts on the ground. I don't have that imagination. I don't know how. And it occurred to me, we are here as the guests of the Kant Foundation, and of course, Kant inspired many of us with his great 1795 essay, Perpetual Peace. But I wonder if Kant were alive today, he wouldn't write a sequel called Perpetual War that was in some way linked to this conflict and linked to the tragedy of, in the rational mind, understanding what a solution would look like, but being unable to translate that into political reality. And so what I'm really trying to say is that hope depends on struggle, and not waiting for governments to solve the problem, but it depends on the civil society activism around the world. That's what brought apartheid to its knees. It was not some moment of sudden enlightenment on the part of the Afrikaner leadership. It was the sense that the worldwide political struggle against apartheid was sufficiently isolating that criminal regime that it did what no one expected. It chose what for it had been the worst alternative as better than what was in store for it if it continued to insist on apartheid. And in my view, that is the domain of hope, of realistic hope, is that civil society mobilization, which is, I think, increasing at and expanding worldwide in a very dramatic way. I want to try to relate that a little bit to the other part of the title, War in the Land of the Prophets. And in my view, to understand the conflict adequately, one has to one has to think a little bit differently than it is, the way it is normally conceived. I believe there are really two wars that are being waged simultaneously. The one war, which is what the mainstream media and governments talk about, is the military war, the violent war, the war that was exhibited so vividly when Israel attacked Gaza, an essentially defenseless society, on December 27th and continued that attack for 22 days. And in that war, it is completely dominated by Israel's military power. And from this point of view, the military war is one which, if you thought about conflict being resolved by force alone, you would have to be a fool not to lose hope. But there's a second war that is not talked enough about and not conceptualized very well. And that's what I call the legitimacy war. The war that involves the human spirit, that involves the mind and heart of people. And in that war is also one-sided, but it's one-sided in favor of the Palestinians. And the Palestinians are winning the legitimacy war. And the challenge is how to convert that victory into a meaningful political outcome.